setting the expectations for when Florida State will leave the ACC.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. Thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles football with me. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. Today's show is going to give a backdrop to the ACC and the Grant and Wright situation for Florida State, the information that I have to date, and try to give a little bit of a timeline on basic things that are going on, what could happen, where they could go, just as an update, because as the college football season comes into focus and everybody just jumps into all the games, this is obviously week one starting here and kind of week two for Florida State with their game against BC this coming Monday. But I want to make sure that this doesn't get lost behind everything that's going on. This court battle, this situation, the opportunity to go to another conference, all the different things that go on with major corporate sponsors and local are all intertwined. It is a big mess, but that's why you have to constantly stay up with it. So I'm going to kind of give a timeline and some expectations over the next 15, 20 minutes. Then we'll get into some BC talk. Let's start with this. It's clear, obviously, Florida State wants to leave the conference. No doubt about it. But the key is the ACC is doing everything, and smartly on their part, to delay, trying to get injunctions and getting stuff thrown out. Which state is it going to be in? For those of you who don't know, when I did this pod maybe a month or so ago, the state of North Carolina, they have more leeway there probably because that's where the ACC offices are. Greater area of North Carolina is very lenient probably to that because they have 4 schools in that state that are tied: Wake Forest, Duke, NC State, and North Carolina. It's interesting. So that is a big deal. Can Florida State get that situation moved where everything's in Tallahassee? I doubt it. But all this just means time. And that means they're under the same contract. So to me, the ACC for the short term wins because they just don't want the situation to move forward. They want it to be as grind out, slow, come to a halt as possible. They know they're eventually going to lose. And here's why. Florida State and Clemson, whether they want to admit it or not, are the biggest brands in the league. Historically, one of those two over the last 25 years has been really good, pretty much at all times, if you get one of the two. If you throw in Miami, occasionally NC State, the league's had some pretty good teams that really try to compete towards the top, but NC State's a push, right? They're a push right into that pack. I don't know if they're really that level, and Miami for the last 20 years hasn't been. So back to the ACC, if they lose even one, let alone two, and they would lose both if they lost Florida State, because that would set a precedent, they're in trouble. The league would probably fold. So here are a couple of things to note that I think, these are my opinions based on what I've been told. And again, full disclosure, adding my own conjecture. Besides dragging it out, the ACC knows that unless they can add teams, like do some kind of combination with the Big 12 or something like that, they don't really have the power with Clemson and Florida State trying to get out to get a bigger TV contract where they could make an amendment to the current deal. So to me, this is pretty simple. Notre Dame's always the biggest fish. We'll get to them a little bit later, but they have to come to some kind of agreement that brings in other teams that are moneymakers. You're not going to pull teams from the Big 10 and the SEC. So that pretty well narrows it down. It's going to be a group of 5 team or a Big 12 team. And the Big 12, is it really anybody you want? Debatable. Oklahoma State, TCU, some of those schools, they're nice, but they're not going to bring in the ad revenue that we're talking about. Fair or not, that's what this is about. Teams that have a natural, massive following. There aren't any left, in my opinion, for football specifically in the Big 12. Now, basketball is a whole other animal. Kansas's following is insane. But it's still a school in the middle of nowhere in a state that's not super populated. It's not the same as like UNC because that is a massive state with far more population that's growing. And it's also a tradition-rich program like Kansas with arguably even more tradition. So unless they can get somebody like Kansas to come, good luck with that. It's going to be hard. But this is my thought process. Back to the Notre Dame point. The ACC forever has tried to get Notre Dame to go all in. They don't have to. I know there's a lot of discussion about this, but the advertisers love Notre Dame. Not like love. They're not going anywhere. They can be as independent probably about as long as they want. That means to get them, you're going to have to give them whatever they want. One of the things they're going to guarantee they're going to want is Stanford to stay in the league. They already got them in. That's a team they want to play every year, and they want it to count against a conference kind of number for the ACC minimum. You could add a couple other teams that Notre Dame might like. Maybe you could get them to jump in. A long time ago, I would have said there's no chance of this, maybe even a year ago. But if you can make it financially solvable for them to have all their rivals in the conference, maybe it's a possibility. Maybe you could get UCLA and USC if you want to really reach. I don't think so, because SC's obviously one of the rivals for Notre Dame. That's their most tradition-rich 1920s or something. Maybe you could do it. But otherwise, the ACC is done long-term with Florida State. Unfortunately, and this is the part I don't like talking about, but I'm here to tell truth, that means it's going to take a while. 2026 to 2027, based on the current deal, is the earliest they would be able to get out. Would there be a guaranteed landing spot beyond the Big 12? I'm 100% certain Florida State jumped to the Big 12 right now. They're not going to do that. Why would they do that? It's not a league that's going to help them financially, and that's the whole point of this. The whole point of their argument in the grant of rights against what ACC is doing, and quite honestly, a poor job of setting them up for financial success for the football program and the athletic department overall for the Noles. They're right. I mean, it's not, ACC's done a very poor job. But to win, they need to be in a conference, or do they? Short term, maybe not. There's nothing wrong with being an independent for a few years because you've got a brand. It's different for a team that's in the group of five going into an independent status. That's good luck. Good luck. Where's your TV revenue coming from, et cetera? Like Notre Dame's a different kind of brand. That's a weird deal. Not many schools are like that. Florida State's one that could survive, at least short term. That will give them a chance to figure out, okay, maybe the ACC splits up and Carolina and Duke go to the Big 10 and they're NC State, and maybe it's one of the other schools, I don't know, ends up going to the SEC, but maybe there is a merger with the Big 12, but you get Notre Dame in it, and you get Clemson in it, and you get Florida State, maybe Stanford. Then it's a different deal. They need a package for that to work. Do not be surprised from what I've heard if Florida State ends up being independent for a few years. I'm cool with that. Everybody wants to play teams with a big cachet like Florida State. Scheduling's not going to really change. Games against Miami, Florida, Notre Dame, Clemson, stuff like that, they could still set those up. It would be some nuances to it. That's okay. That's not going to matter much. What's more important is that you have this continued battle, whether or not you get in or out of the conference in 26. I don't know. Again, the year is hard to say. That stuff is courtroom stuff. I'm not guessing on that specifically. I just know 26 is the earliest. So if they get out in 28 and they're independent for 2 years and they join a conference in 2030, it is what it is. You battle for as long as you can. You may have to get some payout, and that's the next thing I'll talk about, but you can get out. I just know that to make it work short term and to go directly into a conference, unless you can get, again, the same schools I was just talking about, whether it's Big 12, Big 10, whatever, it's hard to get in. There's got to be a grouping that's going to work to make the advertising work and a lot of different things. While Florida State, I think, would be a great fit long-term for the Big 10 and what they're trying to do with the footprint. The Big 10 would love it, although they're not necessarily going to admit it publicly. They would love to get Notre Dame because of the money. They would have two big brands they would be adding. They'd love to add Clemson, I'm sure, too. They're not going to admit it because they're in this fight. Guarantee it's still true. And they would add a footprint in South Carolina. They're the one that's the national conference. So they're the easy selection here. And that brings us to the money to get out of this in the first place. All the things that I have heard from this point all the way back to when this started is that Florida State's going to need some kind of outside financing or something like that. I don't know all the specifics. I've heard some different things on it, but that's going to be expensive. So unless the ACC finds some kind of help, and they grab some other teams and bring into the league to make it more, I don't know, easily approachable for teams to go and say, hey, Visa, hey, Goldman Sachs, major advertisers, to do special business with them to increase the revenue, I think the ACC is in a lot of trouble. Because if they don't, status quo is not going to get it done. Because if it would, why wouldn't they just renegotiate the contract right now and get the sponsors to give them more money? They can't. If they were really that invested, they would do it without ticking off these schools. They're not believing in the league. You're not telling me otherwise. The ACC is not able to renegotiate. You can't tell me that some of their people haven't tried to do it, because they'd like to get more money too. I mean, just do the math here. Why would you not want more money for yourself and your schools? They can't get it with the current group of schools in it. They got to either add teams or the ACC is done. So this is not just about Clemson and FSU sticking around. They got to add some teams. Again, Kansas, Notre Dame, however you want. Maybe it's SC or something like that if they get lucky. If you got SC, it's a lot easier to get Notre Dame. There's a lot of ways to look at this, but it is super complex, and it is not going to go away anytime soon. Again, 2026 is a key name or key year to go with. That's very important. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about the grant of rights with its ability to be functional for now. Just try to keep the status quo, do the best you can with your program, and then move forward. That's next here on Locked On Seminoles. Have you downloaded the Gametime app yet and used its opportunities to get great tickets? Gametime is an app where you can buy tickets to just about anything. Concert. Take your wife to a movie. Take your friend to an orchestra. You can go to see a Florida State football game against Boston College. Whatever it is you're trying to do. The most important part about using this app is this: convenience. Right on your phone, a couple of clicks, type in something that you want. You can type in Atlanta Falcons, Florida State Seminoles, whatever it may be. You can click on football, pick a game, pick a seat, and you, in about 15 seconds from the time you start, you'll be able to see your seat to the playing field or to the stage, whatever it may be, very quickly. It's very convenient. To that point, Florida State also has all-in-one pricing, so something that you see at the beginning, you will see at the end. You can set it up that way so you're not shocked at the end with the sticker price. Finally, this is an opportunity to do something, again, it's on the go. You can be anywhere and make it happen. So make sure you download Gametime. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. This show is also brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We are doing something a little different for you now through September 22nd. FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. When the YouTube TV base plan, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to catch every regular season Sunday after out-of-market afternoon game, evening game, or anything else. All of them are included. All you need to do is have a Google account, current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Setting the expectations for this probably make a lot of you just as frustrated as me. Trust me, the grant of rights is not fun to follow. I don't like court cases. I don't have any interest in that. I want to talk about Florida State football, the grander landscape of it. But to do that, we got to have conferences and the realignment stuff. So this is just going to be some extra that I have before I move in here in a couple minutes to the Boston College expectations. Here we go. Number one, to reiterate, 2026, that's the earliest we're going to see something. And that is probably very optimistic. Slow. It will be very slow. You're going to see teams from other leagues behind the scenes, even guys like Pete Thamel or what have you, won't know all this, are going to inquire or have inquiries come to them about joining and having a different merger with leagues. They will do 3 things in regards to this: deny, deny, deny. Welcome to major college athletics, business in general, and quite honestly, the politics of major college athletics / advertisers. That's how it works. It's why I can't stand it. But I guarantee you that teams, again, like I mentioned earlier, Kansas, it's a major player. The Big 12 is elite in basketball. They would hate to lose Kansas. Don't tell me that the Big 10 wouldn't love to add Kansas basketball just alone, and they're actually up in football right now. They could add them. They could add Clemson and Florida State. Maybe they get Iowa State to join as well. Who knows? And they all go to the Big 10. Something like that. You could see Florida State's money, whatever the total, it's 37 million or whatever they're getting a year. They could double that, if not more, with that contract yearly. That's a lot of dough, man. You have to look to find ways to do it. So I'm going to bring up 2 questions for Florida State fans. Answer these on YouTube however you see fit. Number 1, would you rather just be in a league, forget the title of the league, would you rather be in a league with at least some current members in it, regardless of where it's at? Meaning, like, I know a lot of people that have answered questions about this on the Locked On Seminoles podcast here at YouTube. They don't want any part of the SEC. They're just tired of hearing the fans. Okay. But would you still be cool with taking Clemson, let's say North Carolina State with you, and Florida State to the SEC? Would that make it better? Or would you, no matter what, not want to join? For the SEC haters, what do you guys want? Would you rather take those teams to the Big 10? Do you care about the basketball aspect of it? There's so many nuances. Answer it however you want. Do you want to stick with some of your own brethren regardless? Or is it just complete break away from the opportunity to go to the SEC, hit the Big 10, or maybe some kind of wild merger with the Big 12, I guess? If you took 4 or 5 teams, like especially if you could somehow get North Carolina, go to the Big 12, the basketball money would be insane. Take Duke. I know Florida State's not a dominant basketball school, but they could quickly become a really good one. Whatever fantasy you have, I'm curious to hear about it. Also, as a little bonus, do you think it would be something that you would want to do in terms of travel? I'm just curious as fans, if they joined the Big 12 and they got Carolina, just optimistically, Notre Dame, Duke, and Clemson all to go. It's like an elite package, pick whatever one you want. Would you be more apt to go to road games for football and basketball if the league was looked at on the same level as like the Big 10 is, just for an instance? These are some of the things that the conversations behind closed doors are going to have. They have to. Because if they're not making you guys happy, they're not making money. People that are ticked don't spend money. It's pretty simple. They have to figure that out to the best of their ability. And that's another reason I think this will go slow. They would rather screw it up for an extra year or so instead of 50 years. Once they make this move, wherever it ends up being, it's very important to get it right. And that is also why the independence factor, I want to bring that back up, do not discount it. If they can just get out of the grant of rights in the ACC for a year or 2, maybe 3, I think they would do that to set a precedent. If it's Clemson can do it first, however they do their case, it's the same deal. They're basically working in tandem, even though the cases are technically separate. They want to set a precedent so they can weave, and they would probably like to be in the same conference, I would assume. They've got a rivalry that's really good, goes back a long time. Florida State and Clemson should play each other. It's a really good rivalry. Maybe they join the Big 10 and do that. So I think there's a really good chance we're going to see Florida State out of the league before 2030. I just think there's a good chance, in addition to that, we're not going to know the exact league because there are so many moving parts that unfortunately we're not going to hear about. Kansas, Notre Dame, all these different schools are going to get approached with all kinds of wild opportunities. How does Florida State fit in? This is a Calc 4 kind of equation. This is not an Algebra 1 kind of an equation. So with that, I'm going to transition here in a moment. We're going to talk a little bit about immediate expectations based on a couple of things that I've heard about Florida State as we head into BC week. This is important for the Noles because they have to get this right. If Florida State is not prepared this next Monday against Boston College, that's not going to end well. Have you gotten some 5-hour energy lately? Whether it's at your local grocery store, the opportunity to pick up one at a convenience store, or even going online and getting a full pack of 12, maybe even 24, 5-hour energy is an opportunity to start your day with an alert ability to do whatever you want. Watching football, working out, getting your day started. 5-hour energy is a great way for you. Zero sugar, convenient, portable size. I do like the size of them. Not going to argue with that. The 5-hour energy website also has all kinds of flavors: watermelon, tropical burst, grape berry, and many more. If you're going to find a way to get them online, it's also very easy. 5hourenergy.com. That's with the number 5. So 5hourenergy.com. Check it out. And you can also use promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all in caps, to get 20% off your order. This offer is only valid through the 30th of September and cannot be used with other promotions. This code is not good with subscriptions. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. Expectations for Florida State versus Boston College. I am a bit concerned about the outside noise. I am. To that point, I'm even part of it by accident. I just tell the truth here on Locked On Seminoles that they stunk it up against Georgia Tech based on the comments all over YouTube. I think most people technically agree. There's only been like 1 or 2 people that didn't think they played poorly, but everybody has their own right to an opinion. The point is, can they get past that? Because they're going to hear it on campus. They're going to hear it in the Tallahassee Democrat, Fox Sports, ESPN, Reddit, any place they go to consume news as players, coaches, administration, staff. That's going to envelop a lot of their day, whether they want it to or not. Can you or can you not block out the noise? Florida State needs to have its best week of practice in a long time. A long time. They need a positive trend. They need every little thing that comes out from the news around the program, whether it's Norvell speaking, whether it's a player that posts something on Instagram, on YouTube, anything else, to be positive in some way, shape, or form, and believable, not just hyperbole. That stuff's not going to work. Any adversity needs to be turned around and turned into positive. I'm not here to say it's going to happen, but it needs to. Here's my concern. As I previewed yesterday on Locked On Seminoles, Boston College is an improved team, experienced quarterback, got a good football coach at the top of the helm that's an offensive guy. I don't know if he's really that great fit for Thomas Castellanos. We'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow's show. But at the same time, I also know that he's a guy that has got more talent than what BC normally does. The receiver corps in particular and the running backs are a little deeper than what BC has. So if Florida State is not focused and they come out and get hit in the mouth by BC's offense, how does that translate to the rest of the game? And what happens if they go 0-2? They can point back to right now. They're still better than BC overall in terms of talent. Don't let it get twisted in your mind. It's not debatable. They have more physical skill. How you utilize it, how you practice to get to the best point on a Saturday, and in this case, a Monday, is still up to you. Having talent and utilizing it are not the same. And blocking out the noise is something I'm very concerned about. Florida State did not do a very good job of reading their press clippings before Georgia Tech. Whether it was me or anybody else that said positive things about them, sure looks like they took that the wrong way. They weren't ready. And that goes for the coaches too. You have to be able to use the negativity now to motivate you, A, and B, more importantly, keep you in line each and every day with everything. Meetings, training, how you eat, how you sleep, and of course, practice. No better week of practice needs to be had this season than the Boston College game. If the Noles come out even flat for 5 plays against BC, we'll know. All eyes are going to be looking at that. It's not really a secret. Can you get it done? Because if you don't beat BC and you think the Wolves are out now, see what 0-2 is like when ESPN opens up SportsCenter after the game. See how that goes. It'll be a diatribe from about 50 people. It's best to knock out the noise now and not deal with even more and possibly exponentially more noise later. So with that, thanks once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen. I truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles football with me. Now go check out Spencer McLaughlin and Locked On College Football. It's a great opportunity to learn more about the Grand Rights, what's going on with Florida State, and get you previewed for week 1 and all the games is Saturday all the way through Monday when the Noles take on Boston College. It's a lot of fun. Make sure you check out that show. I'm on there quite a bit. Everybody have a good one, and I will see you later this evening for the second episode of Locked On Seminoles.